All right, so let's jump right in. I'm going to be the first person to admit that this one is a little strange. We have move, scale, rotate, MSR. So that's move, scale, rotate. Now, the previous one is MSR in the viewport. This is MSR with selection sets here. So we have the same element and iteration operations where we can iterate through our selection sets, or we can automatically select an element set, right? So let's do that real quick. Let's prepare the element setup we had before, and there we go. So now we have one element in the middle, and then single quad elements all around that one in the middle. And let's get into this. So when I pick the pivot location, and let me open up the editor for this so you get a better view. I'm actually going to move these out of the way. Scale this down. Usually when you do a rotation, the pivot point will move and therefore you can't undo the rotation. It's something to deal with how it's not a problem. It's just how Max handles it in the UV space. So this works around that, or actually doesn't work around it. It resolves that in a different way. So this tool allows you to pick your pivot location, okay? And then you can rotate around that. Now, when you actually change the pivot from the center point, you see that the rotate changes to a yellow bar here because it's informing you to be cautious about how you're rotating things. Okay, and let's just jump right in with how this is working. Okay, so we will scale from the top left corner. We'll scale you. Okay, we'll right click to invert the number. So it's at a half. The inversion of that is 2. So now I'm going to left click again to apply that. Then I can right click to invert that number and then left click to apply it, and on and on and on. So I can do the same thing with the top here, or the V, right? And I can quick set numbers here. So that's 1.3337 is going to go to 3/4. So I can left click, I can right click to invert and replace it back to itself. And it's scaling upon that position I defined. So I can set the pivot now to the center point and do the same thing. And you see that just works. Okay, so that's just a basic scale system for however you're working on a pivot. Let me give you a little more of that. So let's move that down to the bottom corner here. Now I want to scale it up from the bottom corner going this way. So what I can do here is keep that at 1.33. I'm going to now left click UV. That will continue scaling it up until I'm happy. I can invert that and scale it back down. Okay. Now, next we have rotate. So we can move this into a point and we can rotate 45. And you see when we're rotating each time, you see how we're up here now? We're not located. Whereas like if we rotated like this, and then rotated like this, and rotated like this, right? That rotation pivot point staying the same on that. Whereas if I go here and I set the pivot point, and then I left click, and then right click, I do get back to that position, which is not a default way when you script things. That might be a little too much information. Just know that when you rotate, we are kind of floating off into space here. And that's why we have the yellow bar to notify us. Okay. So we try to replace our object's position. Let's put that at the top corner here and do that same thing. Left click, we're floating off. Okay, so we think if we right click, we'll go right back to that spot, but we're not. You see that? So just be aware that when you change things around for how you're rotating things, that it doesn't behave perfectly. Okay. So I remember there's more information to it, but at this time it's been over a year and a half since I put that together. So I just can't remember the specifics at this moment. Now I'm going to place this in the middle here, and we're going to set the rotation back to the center. Now, obviously, if I rotate this, it does as expected. Okay. Now for moving, what I can do here is move this along, right? And I can even do that without information here, right? So here we are. move. Okay. And I can go up and down. And that's simplistic, but it is what it is. So now we have pixel move. It's going to take a map size that you define, and we can move based upon pixels. Okay. So now when you go too far up with your mouse and then you start moving back down, you're still going to move up a bit because the way the Mac spinners work. So once you move up too far, release, then click and go down. Release, then click, then go up. Release, and click, then go down. Or you can just deal with the having to do the mouse travel additional distance to reset the direction. Okay. That's the pixel move. Now we have elemental pivot. This is a special placement tool. I demonstrated this a little bit earlier. It's very simple. So I'm going to place this one, this element here. I'm going to set the pivot to the bottom corner, and then I'm going to place that at, let's do 0, 0. Okay. I'm going to click that, and there we go. We placed the object based upon the pivot position of the object and the position of the pivot on the UV space. So let's just say I want to get to the middle. I'm going to right click to set the V, left click to set the U, and now I'm going to set the pivot to the top right corner. I'm going to place this top right corner at this center point of the UV space, which is 0.5 of each. Let's position that element. There you go. So you can do this to your heart's content. You know, you can, let's do this. We can shift and right click to increment. So if we control left click, we remove 0.5 from the U. If we shift, well, if we control left click, we remove from the U. If we control right click, we remove from the V. If we shift right click, we add to the V. If we shift left click, losing my mind here, we add to the U. Okay, so let's set this at 1, 1, and now we'll position the element. And now we have placed that pivot point on the element and then place that pivot point there with reference to the element and the UV space, right? So that's good. These tools are a little strange, but you never know when you need such tools. They're here if you ever need them. That's the point. Okay.